Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nishant, and welcome to another episode of the Nishant Garg Show. The mission of the show is to spread awareness on mindfulness practices, psychology, mental health, and spirituality. My job on the show is to invite world class performers to share the practices to live a fulfilled life. This episode guest is Guy Kawasaki. Guy Kawasaki is the chief evangelist of Canva and the creator of Guy Kawasaki's Remarkable People podcast. He is a brand ambassador for Mercedes-Benz. He was the chief evangelist of Apple and a trustee of the Wikimedia Foundation. He is also the author of Wise Guy, The Art of the Start 2.0, The Art of Social Media, Enchantment, and 11 other books. Kawasaki has a BA from Stanford University, an MBA from UCLA, and an honorary doctorate from Babson College. In this episode, I asked him what makes him happy. Would he ever go back to work for Apple? What is his opinion on sending kids to college? And to know more, keep listening. Guy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled and excited to have you.
Not as thrilled and excited as I am.
I want to start off something very funny.
Yeah.
You smile in so many of your videos. Every time I've seen you smiling, what is the reason? Does it come naturally to you?
A lot of people ask me that. I'm just a happy guy. I mean, I don't know. I'm an optimist. I view the world as half full, not half empty. And I have, 4 kids and I have wife 1.0 and life is good. I'm chief evangelist for Canva. Canva is doing just fantastically. And I got free Mercedes-Benz from Mercedes. And I surf almost every day. What have I got to be unhappy about?
Looking at the current situation, coronavirus, I'm sure a lot of people may be unhappy, not feeling fulfilled. Is there any secret sauce, if you could share with our listeners?
Nothing. I wish I could. First of all, if I could tell you that on a podcast, I would charge you for interviewing me. But the bottom line, I can only address what happened to me, right? So it started off with parents. I'm third generation Japanese American. So second generation, my parents, they really emphasized education. So they sacrificed everything for my education. So, to get me started, it was education. And then there are people who are smarter than me and there are people who work harder than me, but not many people are smarter and work harder than me. So I just love to work. I don't have a problem working. And I'm a lucky guy. What can I say?
You went to Stanford, right?
Yeah, well, I went to, believe me, I would not get into Stanford today. So I went to Stanford from 72 to 76. And that is so long ago, believe it or not, that being Japanese American back then was considered being an oppressed minority. So I got in because of, the desire to have a more racially diverse student body. If you went to Stanford today, it's like all Asian. So yeah, that's how old I am. Where it was a problem being Asian American back then.
I want to ask you that there are many influencers in this world who are promoting that we should not go to college. People should not go to college. College is a time waste. College is a money waste. Do you have any opinion or thought on that?
Well, first of all, I don't know if people should be giving advice like that because, how the hell do they know? They're just expressing their opinion. If you ask me my personal opinion, I think everybody should at least consider going to college. I think that in several ways, at 18, do you have enough knowledge for the rest of your life? I would debate that. At 18, do you have a level of maturity for the rest of your life that, you can start making good decisions? Not clear. And then also at 18, why not have 4 great years of college? Because you can work the rest of your life. So, you should postpone working as long as you can and live off your parents as long as you can. So Now, I understand the concept that not everybody is meant for college. I understand that. So, if you everybody has some kind of skill, and if your skill is, and I interviewed Christy Yamaguchi, I interviewed Roy Yamaguchi, no relation. Both of them never went to college, right? So if you are a world class figure skater, if your passion is cooking, if you're the world's greatest musician, maybe college is not for you. But for someone to say people shouldn't go to college, that would be as wrong as me saying everybody needs to go to college. It's simply not that black and white.
In one of your TED Talks, you mentioned that everybody should learn how to write software.
I
Did
did.
you learn how to write software?
Oh, I am so old that software back then was punch cards. I mean, literally, you took these cards and they made little holes in them, and that's how you program something. So I don't know how to write a program. I couldn't write a one-line program if I tried. So the reason why I said that, people have asked me, if you could go back, what would you have studied more? And I wish I had taken a programming class or two, so that now in my tech career, I could know when the programmers are bullshitting me, which is probably whenever their lips are moving. But, it would be nice to have some kind of basis of knowledge to talk about programming for when you need to talk to your engineers. Not necessarily to be an engineer.
Does it help to improve our thinking patterns?
Programming?
Yes.
I get, the positive case would be that you learn about logic, you learn about the process of debugging. I mean, I could build a case for that. Well, on the other hand, the world is kind of messy. and it's not as simple as finding the loose handles and the memory leaks, and life goes on. I mean, it takes more than that. So I just think it's, I would also say, for example, that it would be good if a hardcore engineer took a psychology class or a sales, class. I mean, did some sale. It's just good to have cross knowledge, as opposed to I'm the programming genius. I don't know anything about marketing. And then I'm the marketing genius. I don't know anything about programming.
How does the power of influence work these days? In one of your podcasts with Dr. Robert, you talked about persuasion and Cialdini, persuasion and persuasion.
Yes.
So you have recommended his book in almost all of your talks.
Yes.
Could you suggest or recommend to our listeners, what did you learn from that book that you applied in your life?
Applied so much of Bob Cialdini's works. It's about influence and persuasion, about the responsibility of reciprocation, concepts of social psychology. His book, Influence, should be required reading, especially maybe to engineers. But anybody in business should read Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Bob Cialdini.
Is there any instance that come to your mind that you were able to apply some principles in your personal life or in business life?
Well, every day. I mean, his book is all about, and I don't mean this in a negative, manipulative way, but how to influence and persuade people, how to get people to do how to get people to do what you want them to do. And that can be taken to an extreme, obviously, and that's very dangerous. But listen, if your lips are moving, you're probably trying to persuade somebody. And pre-pandemic days, when you go to the airport and you check in and they say, well, we have a 2-bag limit and you have 3 bags. Well, guess what? If you knew influence and persuasion, you could probably get that 3rd bag for free, and you might get an upgrade to first class if you're really good. Certainly you might get an aisle seat. I mean, and that's persuasion. When you apply for a job, that's persuasion too. When you ask somebody to be on their podcast, that's persuasion. That's not engineering. You're not like writing Python there.
So is there any other book that has changed your ways of thinking and ways of living?
the book by Brenda Uland called If You Want to Write. Now, it's written for writers, but you can substitute any sort of creative task for the word write. So if you want to program, if you want to play music, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's about creativity and unshackling yourself from your own limits and the limits of society to write or speak or make movies or be an entrepreneur or write a program. So If You Want to Write is probably the most influential book in my life.
Do you ever read your own books?
Well, it depends on how you mean. So, my books go through literally hundreds of drafts. And a lot of it is me reading it, printed out on paper, reading it out, even digitally. I edit and edit and edit and edit and edit. I spend so much time editing. So now, if that's what you mean, yes. If you mean, do I take my finished, copy of Wise Guy and go to the beach and read it? No. I mean, once I publish and I'm done, I'm done. I never want to see it again.
You openly talk about that you believe in God.
Yes.
Do you pray every day?
No. That's a very tricky thing. I believe in God. I believe in ethics. I believe in reciprocation. I believe in kindness. I believe in helping people less fortunate than you. I believe in all these kind of things, right? But right now in this environment, I think you have to separate God from the church because the two things are not the same. So, for example, there are things that are condoned, if not blessed, by the formal church that I see as just the antithesis of how God would want something to happen. So I cannot build a case in my mind that God would say, there's a pandemic, people come together, they can infect each other, they can cause misery and pain, suffering and death, but I want you to have in-person Sunday church meetings right now. I do not believe if God could tell us directly that he would say, yep, don't worry about the pandemic. I got you covered. Don't worry. Just go meet in person. Hundreds of you sitting next to each other, drinking from the same glass of wine. I mean, that it's incomprehensible to me that some of the decisions or supporting, breaking up families, incomprehensible. Like that God would support that.
I come from a software background. I've been writing programming for the last 10 years.
That's too bad.
So, so speaking of that, in corporate world, people don't like to talk about kindness, compassion, being vulnerable, and talking God, religion, and spirituality.
Yeah.
Did you have these kind of discussions back in your Apple days?
Never. Well, you mean during business hours in business? No.
Yeah.
Never. I think it's a highly personal thing, and I don't know. I also, there's a part of me, I believe in God, and as I say, believing in God is not the same as believing in the church today. Right? It's completely different. You have to decouple the two. It's kind of like you can love Macintosh, you can love iPhone, but you can hate Apple. You can separate the two, right? So I don't want to be held out as an example of, oh, here's a business person who's highly successful and he believes in God and he's a Christian. So, the prosperity gospel that if you donate a lot of money, you more chance to be in God's grace and, all that kind of stuff. And if you are in God's graces, you'll get money. I mean, it's such a slippery slope to set yourself up and say, yeah, look at me. Aren't I wonderful? I'm a Christian and I'm a business person. You can have it all too. I don't ever want to be that example.
You are not a Christian evangelist.
No. I am an evangelist, which is different from evangelical. Evangelical and evangelistic is two completely different things.
Do you have spiritual practices in your day-to-day life?
Not in the sense that you mean. I don't, I
Like
don't do.
meditation, some sort of mindfulness practices?
Nope. I get up and I go to work.
What time do you wake up?
It depends where I am. If it's in Santa Cruz, I wake up at like 6 o'clock to get out into the water. I I'm not spiritual in the sense that you mean about, incense and yoga and that
Like
kind of stuff.
mindfulness?
Well, I mean, it's interesting how you define mindfulness because like when I'm editing my podcasts and I edit the first pass myself, I'm in a state of flow that I can sit there for 2-3 hours and just edit. Nothing can, I'm in a state of flow. So is that mindfulness? I mean, I think so, but I don't know. It depends on how you define, mindfulness to some people means that, you got your incense and you got your little bells going and you're, on a windswept beach and you're holding your hands like this and, then I don't know. That's not what I do. I can get into a state of flow when I'm editing my podcast, when I'm writing, when I'm even being interviewed, when I speak. When I speak, I am definitely in a state of flow. That when I speak, I lose track of time. No matter how sick I am, how tired I am, you put me on stage and I'm on. I get a flow and a mindfulness. So that's my kind of mindfulness.
And do you still believe in 10, 20, 30 rule from Steve Jobs?
Yeah,
Every
absolutely.
presentation.
10 slides, 20 minutes, 30 points. If everybody did that, the world would be a better place.
You have 4 children, right?
Yes.
So is there any advice that you have given to your children that has shaped their life?
I've given them advice. They haven't listened. So
what advice did you give?
Well, I give them very business practical tips, and I tell them that, we have a moral obligation and that kind of thing. But listen, if you're asking me if I'm such a wonderful father that I like have these, soul searching heart to heart talks with my kids and they're in rapt attention and they go off and do exactly what we talked about. I don't know if any parent can say that's how it works. Maybe in the YouTube video, but not in real life.
Are you proud of them?
Very, very much so. They are the center of my universe. Absolutely.
Are they proud of you?
That not in surfing. I don't know. I hope so. I think so.
I want to ask you one simple thing, that our quality of life depends on the quality of questions we ask to ourselves. Do you ask some good questions to yourself?
Man, you are just too freaking deep for me, man. I don't ask myself any questions. I just, I got 2 more tuitions and I got a mortgage. Yeah, I mean, I just get up and I kick ass. That's what I do.
Or because you're Guy Kawasaki?
Because I am Guy Kawasaki. That's what Guy Kawasaki does, right? You want to talk to someone about, mindfulness and yoga and all that kind of stuff? I'm the wrong guy. I mean, that works for many people. I'm just not that person. I'm just a real pragmatic guy. And you give me a problem and I will find you a solution.
I want to ask you, what does your normal day look like in the life of Guy Kawasaki? Normal day.
It depends. If I'm in Santa Cruz, I wake up at 6 or so. I go surfing till about 9. And so are you saying what a normal day in the pandemic looks like or prior to?
Prior and during pandemic.
Okay. So prior to pandemic, I wouldn't be in Santa Cruz because my kids were attending school, so somebody had to drive them and pick them up. So I would be in my other house and I'd wake up at 7 and sometimes I would make them breakfast and I would take them to school. Then I would go to a coffee shop and I would do social media and email. And then I would go eat lunch and then I would pick them up and come home and then I would do social media and email. So now in the pandemic, I wake up, I make them breakfast, they go to their online class. I don't have to take them to school. So that, I get an hour right there. Then I get another hour if I was going to pick them up that day. So I got 2 hours back every day. And then I go and edit my podcast and do email and social media. So that's all I do.
Simple life.
Yeah, I have a simple life. Now in Santa Cruz, I surf. So that takes out, 3 or 4 hours a day.
Speaking of social media, it can be overwhelming for a lot of people. So how should somebody start their online business through social media? Do you have some tips?
Well, it depends on what kind of business. So if you have a fashion or cosmetics or food or something that's apparel that is conducive to beautiful images, then I would say it's Instagram. If it's more of a direct sale kind of thing, I would say it's Facebook, because Facebook allows targeting. I don't know what you would do on Twitter, because Twitter is, I mean,
Dead?
well, I don't know if it's dead. It's clearly not dead, but I have 1.4 million followers on Twitter, and there's hardly any interaction. Maybe they're all inactive accounts or they're Russian bots. I don't know. So I think for most businesses, most small consumer-facing businesses, it's Instagram and Facebook. If as a person, I would say it's LinkedIn. So between LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, I think you have it covered.
Do you have any favorite platform?
Well, probably LinkedIn. And also, I'm an advisor to a company that has a product called Privy, Privy. And Privy is like Slack meets iMessages meets Instagram. So it's a double opt-in, highly private, highly controlled Instagram with better workflow than iMessages. So that's something people can check out. Privy.
Got it. And do you still wear your emergency watch?
Right now, this is a Breitling B55. The Breitling B55 is their smartwatch that syncs up with an iPhone. I gave my emergency to my son, who's a wingsuiter, because I thought, well, he's more likely to need a Breitling emergency than me, because what am I going to do? Take the wrong exit on a freeway? And having said that, I do use an Apple Watch. I'm a little hesitant to tell you this, but I use an Apple Watch only to track my surfing, because Apple Watch has an app that tracks your surf, how many rides you caught, how far, how fast, tracks it, syncs up to a video camera that shows you the particular waves you're on. So that's using Surfline and Dawn Patrol. And so what I do is I wear my Breitling or a Breitling, and then when I go surfing, I wear my Apple Watch. I come back from surfing, I take that off, I sync to my phone, then I put it back on the charger until I go surfing again.
And you talk about that we should never ask men about the business model.
Yeah.
Why we should not ask men?
Because I think that men always want to kill stuff. And so if your whole orientation is about killing stuff, plants, animals, people, companies, products, that your judgment is so flawed that why ask men? You should ask women. Women don't have this predisposition to always want to kill stuff.
What do you feel about this competition in the social media world, in this business world? Everybody's trying to compete over something. So how can we navigate through that?
I think that's a fact of life that, listen, if Steve Jobs wasn't competitive, he wouldn't have built Apple and the products that he did. So I don't think we can all hold hands. I mean, now there's a difference between competing and trying to build the best product and the best service and doing that unethically and illegally and against the norms of society.
Would you ever work for Apple again?
First of all, I'm 65 years old. I can't imagine they would hire me again. If Apple said, "Would you come back and be an Apple fellow again?" I would consider it. If they asked me to be on the Apple board of directors, I would consider it. But to come back to work for Apple and, punch a clock? No. But in an advisory role or a directorship role, maybe.
Do you remember any conversation from your life that has impacted you the most positively?
Boy, I mean, every conversation with my wife impacts me importantly and positively. Some are more difficult to deal with. And I can't honestly point to a conversation that said, "Oh, this changed my life." Because you know what? Listen. It's not that I've been perfect, but I haven't really done anything too bad. Well, on the other hand, I'm not a billionaire either. So I'm just kind of in the middle, I'm in that happy middle. I like wake up, work, and do that. I don't do shit, and shit doesn't happen to me. I mean,
Do you read different kinds of books except business books?
I hardly ever read business books, and I'll tell you why. If I read a business book and it's better than my book, I get depressed. And if I read a business book and it's not better than my book, it's a waste of time. So there's no upside. It's
I
completely
was
rational.
I was reading 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel.
The one, and he believes people shouldn't go to college, right?
That I cannot comment.
Yeah,
Everybody has.
Peter Thiel is one of the people who says you don't need to go to college. So, and the kind of fiction I read is always mystery and thriller. So I love mystery and thriller, rogue CIA agent, rogue Navy SEAL, spy, somebody who's killing people, that kind of thing.
Killing people, not in the real life.
Yeah.
Would you give any advice to 18-year-old kid that what should they do?
I'm 65. I'm not sure what I should do. Okay. So like 18, I mean, you're not supposed to know what you should do. You just have to understand that someday you're going to look back and you're going to say, what did I do at 18? I can't remember. Right now, you think the most important thing is to make the right choice career-wise. It ain't going to matter. I went to law school for 1 week and quit. And then, when I was an undergrad, I thought I wanted to be a doctor for 1 week. And then I went to law school for 2 weeks. And then I ended up, believe it or not, in the jewelry business. And from the jewelry business, I went into the computer business. And, I became a writer and a speaker and a podcaster. And if you look at my career, it's not a straight line. There's no rhyme or reason. It's kind of just whatever I fell in love with.
Are you saying we gotta keep trying new things until we figure out what we love and enjoy?
Well, again, I'm not saying I'm God and I can tell you how to live your life, but that's what I did. I fell in love with stuff and I pursued them.
We have a lot of influencers talk about that we should try these practices. We should wake up early in the morning. We should go to bed by this time. We should have some practices. So you're saying we should believe in ourselves and move forward with that, whatever works for us.
I'm saying I am not qualified to tell people how to live their life. If XYZ says get up at 6 o'clock and drink orange juice mixed with a raw egg and then, go run 5 miles and then, do your most important tasks first and then, don't answer email to noon and, don't look at Twitter till 2 p.m. I guess.
Speaking of the emails again, I was amazed when I was getting your back and forth emails because people say that people who make millions of dollars, they don't have time. You got to wait for months and months. You got to wait for days. So I was getting your responses very quick. And then I realized the humbleness, the kindness, the compassion.
Like people view as email as, this is something that they dread and all that. Don't get me wrong. I don't enjoy it, but it's part of my existence. It would be like if you're a dentist, you got to drill teeth. If you are me, you got to answer email. It's just the way it is. So, what can I say? I mean,
so coming back to your current life, you have lived a big life. What are you most proud of?
My family, my kids, for sure.
Before I ask you my last question for this podcast, what's the legacy you want to leave?
I want people to remember that I raised a great group of kids and that I empowered people to change the world with my writing, speaking, podcasting, video, whatever, that I empowered people to change the world.
By the way, I would like to mention that I love listening to your podcast on repeat. So I highly recommend. One of the podcasts about parenting, I send that link to my friend. You got to listen to this.
Oh, that's great. I got to tell you, so my podcast, each one gets downloaded about 10,000 times. Okay. Which apparently is very good in the podcasting world, but I don't understand. Like all these people tell me, the best business podcast to get like 250,000 downloads and I'm 1/25th of that. I don't know. I refuse to believe those podcasts are 25 times better than my podcast. So tell all your listeners to subscribe to my podcast.
I will definitely. Actually, I got to know about your podcast a month ago from Tim
Huh.
Ferriss.
That's great.
I follow Tim Ferriss
Yeah.
newsletters, and he mentioned that he's listening to Stephen Pink.
Yeah. Stephen Wolfram.
Stephen Wolf, his podcast, and then I started following your podcasting. I was like amazed. If I'm going to get food outside, if I'm running, if I'm going anywhere,
That's
Guy
great.
Kawasaki is always there. So even if we are not talking like this, I always listen to yours.
Well, thank you.
Always. And in my podcast, from your teachings, I've been able to shift so many things, thinking differently.
Great. Succeeding in my life goal.
All right. So where can people find you online?
GuyKawasaki.com. They want to see, what I'm posting about is LinkedIn. But I tell you, if you counted the hours of what I put effort into, it's my podcast. It's my podcast.
It is indeed.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Guy.
Thank you. Take care.
It is my honor. Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode today. I hope you learned from this episode that you can apply in your life. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe to the podcast, The Nishant Garg Show, on Apple Podcast. You can also subscribe to the show through my website, https://nishantgarg.me, nishantgarg.me. You can also share this podcast with your family and friends or whoever want to feel fulfilled. And thank you so much again.